Okay, so it's just about to go live here. And I guess I'll just have to keep, I'll just have to stay host. That's fine. Okay. Okay, I think we are live on the Know It and Grow It Intro to Edible Gardening series. I'm here with our knowledgeable local Newark gardeners, Charmaine and Akoth and Keven. And Dena may join us this week, or she may be back next week. You may have to tune in next week if you want to see Dena again. We are spending time this week talking about kind of the basics of where, when, and how to grow. And this is all part of our Intro to Edible Gardening series that was inspired by noticing that, you know, people are really concerned about food security more than ever. And we know that putting food sovereignty into the hands of the eaters, people like us, is super important. And we want to make sure that as many people that want to participate in being able to grow their own food have the knowledge to do that. And so we've invited these local gardeners to help teach us from their hard-won knowledge. We're going to be meeting every week in July on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And we'll probably eventually continue with some other gardeners, but you'll really get to know these folks pretty well. We are going to start out. I'm going to show you really quick what our outline is for today. Let's see. We're going to start out by talking about where to plant. So when we're talking about where to plant, we want to discuss different places where people grow things, right? Planting in the ground, growing in raised beds, different kinds of containers. Actually, we're going to get more deeply into container gardening with Dena, who's a real expert at that on another session, but we'll be talking about all these different systems today. And then we're going to be talking about how to plant. So planting using seed or using seedlings or transplants, and then when to plant. So we're going to be hopefully learning about all those things today. And we're going to start off with talking about in-ground planting with Keven. Keven and Akoth, pretty sure, are on the ground at Rabbit Hole Farm. Are you not?
Yes, we are. We are.
So, so Keven, you were going to talk about growing in the ground because you probably have some places at Rabbit Hole you can even show where you're planting vegetables and other kinds of stuff directly in the ground, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do a lot of direct seeding here. A lot. Just because the farming itself is kind of like tedious. It's not hard, but it takes up time. So we realize just by
Uh-oh, we just lost Keven. I think we lost Keven. I'm gonna oh, you're back, Keven. Hey, Keven. Your device seems to be freezing.
Okay.
Can you hear him?
You can hear me though.
Yeah, you're not moving, but we can hear you.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
kind of moving like a robot. You're a little bit like a robot.
So I'll just be still and they'll never notice it. Except don't read my lips. Just
Yeah.
like this.
You're just,
Okay.
it's like you're a perfect yogi there.
Okay. Yeah, I see you're freezing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, now you.
Kevin, we lost you again. This is the difficult part about being live and on the spot.
Yes.
Okay, we'll try one more time. And if we lose you again here, then we'll just jump to Charmaine where she can start talking.
Okay, I'll try to make it short and sweet. Okay. Hello again. This is Kevin Porter. We're at Rabbit Hole Farm. Akoth is with me today, and talking about direct seeding. We do a lot of direct seeding here, only because when you're not direct seeding, that means you're either growing it outside in a greenhouse or you're growing it in a space in your house. Not everybody has spaces, or you're buying it from a nursery. So we like to direct seed, and some things are just best to direct seed. I can name a couple right off the top. Okra, spine, taproot. They're very sensitive. So cucumbers, root vegetables, and okra, things like that. And they're kind of like summer crops or fall crops, actually, and spring crops. It doesn't matter, but definitely direct seed, because it'll save you a lot of time. That's what, if you're not producing food for the market or to sell. And and that's it. Again, if you direct seed, you don't have to have stuff in your house. You don't have to have a greenhouse. It eliminates a lot, and you get to see it. It just takes a little bit more time, and a little bit. Okay, and that's it. Should I go to anybody else have any comments on direct seeding? Or call? Do you direct seed?
I know some, yes, some things seed, and simply because to experiment and see how
Okay.
they're going to do by themselves. But mostly this year, I learned that starting indoors saves me time into the growing season, since we have such a short season. But some of the early spring crops, like the lettuces and kale, I
We may have lost you guys again.
We hear you. So I guess we're here.
Now you're back.
Yeah.
So let's take a minute to go to Charmaine. Charmaine, you were going to talk a little bit about growing in raised beds, right?
Yes, so our garden, the Giving OneTenth garden, is planted in raised beds because, we were concerned about the soil that is on the garden site. And also for us growing in beds, it's a better, you have control of the soil that you use. And also, sorry. So you have better control of the soil that you use, and you have better spacing, and you can control, the vegetables that you grow. So you have a tendency to plant vegetables closer, so you have a high yield during the growing season. And also planting in grow beds, the boxes warm up, especially in our zone 7, faster. So the way we did it, there was a challenge this year because the frost, when we thought the frost season had ended, it started again. So we actually needed to put hoops over the beds to control the plants from not freezing over or dying, because that was a great challenge. And also, if we plant in grow beds, the tendency to overcrowding, because we started a lot of bok choy in our garden, and now we have a lot of bok choy, a lot of Swiss chard, because we overestimated the volume of the seedlings. So, as you know, the Giving OneTenth garden is primarily, we donate most of our produce. So anybody who would like to have, you know, bok choy, if you know how to cook it, or Swiss chard, we have a lot to donate to the community.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up some of the pictures that you just sent me of your chard bed. I'm sorry, it's taken me a minute to get to it. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. So Charmaine, can you say a little bit about like what it took to build the beds that you were using? You know, like what are the expenses involved with growing in raised beds?
So the lumber that we use, we just purchased at some Home Depot or any lumber supply store. It's untreated lumber. And we build the beds primarily, well, I built the first 10 beds in the garden myself. And we prime the beds after it's built with linseed oil to protect it since it's untreated. And termites resist actually eating the wood for a couple of years. But the cost is pretty affordable if you want to do that, because the beds are, you know, you have to build the beds based on the dimension of your space. So it's best to build beds that are, you know, you can reach across. So it's not difficult to plant certain things or harvest certain things. And watering is also a great option because the bed stays more hydrated versus planting in ground where the soil has, you know, a greater chance of runoff, and you lose a lot of the water from planting in ground and soil. And
can you give us like an estimate, like when your beds got built, how long did it take to build the different beds that you have there? Was it built over time?
We built it in phases. I had 2 build out sessions. So the first beds actually I got from the Greater Conservancy. They were breaking down one of their gardens, and I got 4 4x4 beds from them. That's how we first started. And the other beds we built over each growing season. The beds are usually 8 foot by 2 feet because it's easier to reach across, like I said, and you know, it's better to keep all the vegetables at the same location. So we plant most of the vegetables together with each other, the same vegetables. We don't do, how do you say, combining plants together. We try to—
Oh, like companion planting.
Companion planting, yes.
So let's see, I'm sorry, let me just, I was trying to get the pictures that you shared. Why am I not, oh, there it is. So that's some of your chard that's growing right now. And yeah, that's what I've found in a lot of raised beds when we've grown in raised beds, that things get going a lot faster because, as you're saying, because the soil heats up early, things germinate fast, they start growing fast. It can be a challenge though. I think when the weather gets really warm, that sometimes it's hard to keep them high, you know, watered frequently enough when you're growing in.
Yes, that's our concern. So we have 6 totes on the garden lot, and the fire services actually refills the totes every week. And we're realizing that we have to fill it more frequently. Instead of coming once a week, they have to come in a week because the water supply is going fast because the weather, we have no rainfall right now.
Right. Let's see, I'm seeing some people have popped up questions here. And I'm trying to see if this is related to what you were asking. Okay, yeah, some of those we can come back to. Yeah, maybe
So the Swiss chard, I want to say we plant this directly in bed. So all the seedlings, the Swiss chard, the bok choy, the kale, it was all planted direct seeding. And then we spaced out the bed, the seedlings over like a month's period.
Wow. So yeah, that's a pretty dense planting of Swiss chard there, it looks like.
Yeah, we planted too many seeds.
Oh yeah. So somebody was asking, can you plant, is it possible to overplant when you're planting in a raised bed? I think that
Yes.
Les was asking that. Yes, Charmaine wants to say yes, for sure, it is possible. One thing that that I know about Swiss chard seed and also beet seeds, I wish I had one right now to show, they look almost like a little grenade, like it's like they're bumpy little things, and they are actually like a little bomb of multiple seeds. So that is also part of the reason why probably your Swiss chard is so dense, is there might be multiple seedlings from one thing that looks like one seed. It's actually multiple seeds together. So
okay.
So yeah, Swiss chard and beets will definitely do that. And then you can just keep eating them. Like you eat some of the little ones and then leave some of them to grow. That's what
exactly. That's what we've been doing.
So another question from Jackie, Charmaine, is with raised beds, do you have to switch out your veggies with different runs in the next year in order to keep the soil fertile, or can you grow the same thing in the same beds each year?
We rotate all our planting in each bed every year. So I do a scale of where we plant certain things and then rotate the planting. Like these beds, we planted peppers last year, and where we planted the cucumbers, we have beans growing there. And when we plant the beans, we have the bitter melon growing. So we do crop rotation in the garden.
So you'll switch out your beds. And how do you keep track of that?
We have a log. I have a log. I keep a personal log of where we plant certain things and what we plant the year before, because the food that we plant is actually the food that we eat, and it's community based. So it's based on, whichever country a person comes from, they have a type of food that they like. So like the bitter melon, a lot of friends of mine like those, and also, cucumbers, the chard, and we eat a lot of greens in my house. So that's really important to us.
Yeah. Well, the greens I think they're so satisfying because they grow fast and you're like, oh, now I've got food already. I'm not waiting around until the middle of the summer before I have, tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff like that.
Yep.
Somebody asked a question about like timing, but I think we're going to come to that because we're going to talk about a little bit about starting plants at different times in a minute. And I know Keven was just joining back on. Okay, we'll wait because I have a couple things I want to ask Keven about growing in the ground. But Charmaine, since what I kind of wanted to ask him about was about soils. Can you say anything? Well, we're going to do another session that's all about soils, but can you say anything about where you got soils to fill your raised beds, and is that expensive, and that kind of question?
I mean, when you purchase soil, you only have to purchase it one time and keep adding compost. So we purchased our soil. The first time we purchased soil, it wasn't a good quality. And then this year we purchased mushroom soil. To me, that's really good. And we had an extra mushroom soil the previous year, and I saved them in barrels, and they decompose so much better that the soil is it's looser, it's more hydrated. And this is a soil that we use in our beds. So, and then with all the compost that we do, before we compost in the beds, but now we have a composter, because the composting in the beds actually pull the nutrients from the vegetables once we grew it. So we started composting in the composter, and it's so good. It's funky, but it's so good.
You use that to keep your buds. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys are no longer in the verdant green. You decided you needed to come in. Technology won.
We are close. We are close. So it's okay.
So since we have both of you, there are a couple of things that we wanted to make sure that we cover that you were going to cover. So Akoth, you were going to, well, maybe Keven first. Can you say, Keven, a little bit? You're out of the screen because you're too tall, man.
Okay. Okay.
There you are. You grow right in the ground at Rabbit Hole Farm in some places, right? Like you have like
Yes.
built up maybe with logs and things like that, but
yeah, they started out to be raised beds, and we do have a few, but we most so much it's in the ground.
So it's in the ground,
But
you've added a lot of mulch on top of the native soil.
Yes.
And Keven, did you do soil testing before you started growing?
No, we did not. We just assumed, being in a city like Newark, a big urban area and semi-industrial area, that all the soil is contaminated. So we covered everything with cardboard and several truckloads of wood chips. And actually, so we could say wood chips at least 6 inches deep, because they cover the raised beds. And then in the raised beds, we put cardboard and soil. So double protected ourselves.
Okay. So Akoth, you were going to talk a little bit about lasagna gardening, right? Like that's kind of related to what Keven was just talking about.
Yeah, so similar to Rabbit Hole, Keven and Aurelius's garden, the garden I'm at, there was very little soil. So I think less than an inch. So we had to build up a lot of soil. And the way to do that, I start in the fall. So I don't wait until the spring because it's too much work to do. When I began, there was a lot of grass. In about 3/4 of the garden, it was all grass. So how I did lasagna gardening, the first thing was to cover the grass with cardboard, which suppresses the weeds and the grass and eventually kills them. And due to the thickness of the cardboard, the sun can't penetrate through the cardboard. And that's why they don't come up over time. And then put the soil that was mixed with, it was topsoil mixed with compost. So those two mixtures over the cardboard and then planted in that. But over time, what I've been doing, similar to Keven and Aurelius, is just getting truckloads of wood chip and putting that all over the garden and then mulching. So it's a simple process, but it's good to start early. So starting in the fall gives the garden enough time to, especially if you're starting from an area that was full of grass, throughout the winter, the cardboard can decompose, the grass can decompose, and when spring comes, you have an area ready for you to garden.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to show really quick. I had an image here to show a little bit of what lasagna, like a lasagna bed could look like. I mean, this is maybe that's not exactly what you have in mind, but a lot of times you see the images of lasagna bed and they show this very complicated structure of, as if it's like this diagram with like a 7-layer cake, but it's really, I think what you're talking about, you use some cardboard, you use different, like wood chips or other organic matter. You can add other like more fresh green compost on it, and then you're building like a nice rich
but before, let me just say something before we confuse people. You would never mix wood chip in with your soil, because it will compete and take away the nutrients that your plants will need, because they are also fighting to decompose. So like this year, what I did was like a mixture of lasagna and hugelkultur. So there were some tree branches and some bigger pieces that were in the garden. So those big layers are put on the very bottom. But then I made sure to add a very thick layer of soil and the mulch on top.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go to that slide, but wait, you just said like, you just said a complicated word there. Did you just say hugelkultur?
Mm-hmm.
Hugo culture with a K.
We're gonna have to put that in the comments so people can look up that word. Do you know how to say it again?
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it.
Culture. She's saying it right.
Hugelkultur.
But it's culture with a K.
Yes.
It's a German word, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, you're just burying your organic matter, starting with the biggest pieces going at the bottom and smaller ones on top, and mixing dry things with green things, and then soil on the very top. So when I planted in that area, I made sure to plant things that had shallow roots.
Right.
Yeah.
To get started. So that's like a permaculture technique you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. This is all cool stuff. I don't even know. I went to, horticulture school for, well, it took me a while. I know, but I never learned all that stuff until, I've only recently kind of started learning some of that. Oh, excellent. So Megan said she just put in a wiki page into the Facebook chats about hugelkultur so that people can look that up, which I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. So some people were asking questions, and I see it's great. Charmaine is answering here in the chat. So somebody was asking about where you can get mushroom soil. I know Kevin was talking about buying some, and Charmaine says she got mushroom soil from the yard. You bought it from the yard in Scotch Plains, New York, and you're saying other landscaping companies. But Kevin, you actually went all the way to Kennett Square, Pennsylvania to get
to that smelly place. So that I could still smell it. But it's just mushroom compost. Yeah. It's at an organic mushroom farm, and then you're allowed to go take as much as you want. But if you're going there, from Newark, it's about 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and some change. But you can take as much as you want. But if you're if you're not going with the dump truck, you need to get there before 9 o'clock and start, because after that time, it's plenty of compost there. But the big dump trucks coming in, they had a front end loader, and they start to, hey, could you step aside while we get in here? And they're moving stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, there was another question I want to see. Oh yeah, because I think Charmaine mentioned growing bitter melon. So Deborah was asking where to get bitter melon seeds. Anybody got a line on that?
You could purchase them, or you can get them from a fellow farmer. You can come get them from us. Not now, but after the season has started, you get them from a ripe bitter melon. I won't say ripe, but when they turn orange or yellow, that's considered, you say ripe. The seeds are orange, they have an orange coating on them. And so you take those, and then those are the ones you plant. Those seeds.
Yep, you're agreeing, Charmaine?
Yeah, or you can get it from Johnny Seeds. They have a really good organic supply of seeds, but the seeds that I have, I saved it from last year's harvest.
That's terrific.
Do you have many left?
I have a couple.
Okay, so you said a couple. I'm not okay. That's good.
So, yeah, I want to take the minute to plug, and we put it in the chat before that the Conservancy still has seeds. We also got some more seeds from this really cool Cooperative Gardens Commission that is like this grassroots nationwide network that's been working to get donations from seed companies, from seed savers, like individuals who grow, who grow plants and they save seed. And there's like a whole great, I don't know, culture and tradition around that, that it's really important that people have control over seeds. You know, that's important that people have, you know, the power and the access to seeds. But so people should contact the Conservancy about, unfortunately, we don't have bitter melon seeds, but we do have a lot of other plants. And I want to take the quick second to mention, because I was just talking about it, I forgot to mention that this whole series, I was really inspired by Soulfire Farm, has a great series called Ask a Sister Farmer. And Leah Penniman at the beginning of it, it's every Friday. You should check out their series. But she talks about, you know, the female ancestors, you know, coming and weaving seeds in their hair, you know, and it's like, she's amazing and beautiful. So anyway, okay. So I think we've answered, we're up to date on the questions that we had here. So we were going to talk a little bit about a couple of other little more unusual growing systems. So as I said, we're going to do another session where we talk more specifically about container gardening, but we're going to really quick, let's see. We were going to talk about, I was going to mention earth boxes. So earth boxes are a type of container garden it's sort of in between growing in a regular container and using a hydroponic system, because it's a purpose-built container where you water down on the bottom. So if you see in this slide, you're filling this little plastic unit, and you fill it, and the water sits on the bottom, and so it keeps the growing medium really regularly, universally moist, and it's constantly releasing fertilizer. So plants grow really fast in these kinds of systems. I wanted to talk about it because I have a bunch of earth boxes. These were like, I've just collected them over time. They've been donated by people like Lorraine Gibbons and other folks who tried growing in them and got tired of it. And I have never purchased any of these. I want to say that they're not super expensive, but I don't generally go out and just go buying a bunch of garden stuff like that. Oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But so if people are new to gardening and if you don't have a garden spot, I think these are really cool because you can just put them on the sidewalk. You can put them on a driveway if you only have like a concrete area to grow in, and it'll, you do have to fill them with water a lot. If you have really vigorously growing plants, you'll need to fill them every day, but it does help kind of regulate the water as you're growing in them. So I wanted to point that out to people. And I have a couple of videos on the Conservancy YouTube page that talk about growing in earth boxes. And then I think, I don't have an image for it, but Charmaine, you were going to talk a little bit maybe about hydroponics. We were just going to touch on it, and maybe we'll do another session on hydroponics. Are you willing to do that, Charmaine?
Sure. So we have some hydroponic systems that we plan on installing in the garden, and Kat is trying to get in my house. Yeah, we purchased some hydroponic system last year to install in the garden, but we're waiting for the solar panels to be installed so we could actually power the hydroponic system, because we don't have a power source going towards the space. So for us, we decided to go that way because you could grow more vegetables in less space, and each tower could hold about 20 to 30 plants because we got extenders. And it's the time frame for growing vegetables is actually less when you grow out of with minerals in water, and it's also safer because you don't have the challenges of testing soil, see if it's contaminated. You have a control environment when you actually use hydroponic system. And it's actually, the tower gardens are, because of the spacing, it's really great if you have a small space. You could grow indoor in the winter. You could put it on your deck or in your yard or in the front of your yard. So it's really easy that way.
Cool. Yeah, so we at the Conservancy have a hydroponic greenhouse. Oh wait, I can't hear you, Charmaine. You got muted. Hold on.
Sorry. No, nothing. I wasn't really saying anything.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that at the Conservancy, we have a hydroponic greenhouse now, a hydroponic system in our greenhouse. And it's been cool to watch how fast we can grow things in it. But it is, at least from what we've seen, you know, we can grow greens really well in a greenhouse setting, but a lot of the other things we haven't been so successful with.
Sit in front of the screen.
So let's see. So we were going to talk really quick now, I think, about timing of planting, right? We were going to talk about, let me see really quick our schedule. Right. So we were going to talk, Kevin already started talking about direct sowing versus transplants. And I think we were going to talk about like cool season versus warm season planting. And I think that you were going to talk about that, Kevin. Does that sound right? You're going to talk about, Kevin's like, no. You're muted for some reason. Kevin, wait, hold on. Wait a second. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Cool season versus warm season. Okay, it's crops. Lettuce, leafy green, thin leafy greens are usually good in the cool season. Harder stuff would be more like okra, tomatoes, cabbage, stuff like that. You know, it's but you know, when you purchase your seeds or if you buy the seedling, usually on the pack, it'll tell you, it'll give you some information. But the challenging part now is that with climate change, the weather is unpredictable, you know, so some things you just have to take a chance and give it a try. You don't know. I've seen people grow things this year or survive the winter because it was such a mild winter. Things survived. Our kale, we have a fruit tree, our fig tree survived, and when the springtime came, it already had leaves on it. You know, it really didn't die back that much, so it's off to a good start. So things like that, you know, you just have to be aware, take a chance, you use your own feelers and see what you sense the season will be, and go on with that from there. But I wouldn't put summer stuff out. I would go with spring stuff maybe a little earlier and take the gamble.
I totally agree with you, Kevin. That's what I always say, like, especially for school gardens, I try and get people to plant cool season things really early because you're not taking such a big chance. You can, you know, you can start some things indoors and put them out early, or start seed early. And then you can, you know, even if it gets a frost, okay, so then you just put out more later. But the warm season stuff, especially we've had this year, we had that really late frost. And so, yeah, as Charmaine was saying, she had to protect things and cover some of her warm season stuff. Even it was, I forget, that was even like at the almost beginning of May, we had some pretty cool, going into that. So, and just as a rule of thumb for people who are thinking about, here I'm showing cool season versus warm season stuff. So like cool season things, generally you can think of almost all the greens are cool season, right? Bok choy, tatsoi, collard greens, mustard greens, lettuce, kale, you know, you can start all of those things when it's pretty cool. And also a lot of root crops like beets, carrots, not peas, they're not root crops, but radishes, those things all cool season. But then when you think of the warm season stuff, it's the things that are fruiting, right? Like cucumber, eggplant, melon, tomato, pepper, that are going to take a longer season, and they need more warm temperatures to be able to produce that. And those kinds of things, I don't know, Kevin, I know you said that you just grow your tomatoes from tomatoes that self-seed, right?
Yeah, they're self-seeded, yeah. Yeah.
But generally, so you're fortunate in that way, but generally people try and start tomatoes indoors, right? And put them out because...
Yeah, and tomatoes are so inexpensive. I mean, and just to get a jump on the season, people that grow tomatoes, I find out, love tomatoes. So you can go to the nursery and get some tomatoes that are already started, you know, and just plop them right in the ground when it's ready. And that's probably with tomatoes the best way to go, unless you're growing something particular, like a unique type of potato, a black tomato or a purple tomato. Those are unusual. You're going to start from seed. You know, so
so like I usually you know, in non-coronavirus times, like there's a few sales, like Rutgers will have a sale, or some of the community garden associations will do a sale of their tomatoes. And so then you can get a nice plant that people have grown in a greenhouse, but you can get some cool varieties. This year we're not fortunate to be able to get our tomatoes that way, but so let's see. I want to make sure that I am checking on questions here. People were asking about, about soil testing, and I see Charmaine was replying to that. So people were asking about testing soil. I know, Kevin, you said you just assumed that the soil you had was not healthy. Did you test soil, Akoth, at
Yes, I did, and the results said that the lead amount that was there was okay for growing vegetables and plants. So since there was some, but at a safe level, I just don't grow directly. So on raised beds, just to be safer, because it's in a residential area. Same, it's very close to Keven and Aurelius's farm. So I assumed the worst and went with the elevated garden.
Yeah. So I just want to give people Charmaine mentioned that you can get soil testing done from Rutgers Cooperative Extension, where you can send in. They'll tell you how to take a sample. Another, not to plug Rutgers, but I would say like the sort of most they do the broadest amount of testing is the University of Massachusetts. You can send your soil samples up there, and they can test for like every possible soil contaminant and also soil fertility. And they do a really good job, really fast and good job. But there's actually if folks are growing in community gardens, I want to put it out there because I think that we are setting up appointments with the oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. This I forget the name of it. It's the federal government's soil testing service. They can actually come out and test at community garden sites. They won't do it on people's residential sites, but they'll try and do a few sites at one time. So if people are interested in that, if you are growing in a community garden, I'm pretty sure that we are going to try and set up an appointment to have some newer garden sites tested. So if you are growing in a community garden site, or you're trying to, we can let us know on the Facebook page, and we will contact you and see if we can get you added to the list of people who are going to get tested. So let's see. I want to make sure that we are up to date. Somebody had a question. I'm going to get back to that question. Let's see. Okay. So we really quick. So we have a bunch of other questions. I just want to be sure that we talked about cool season veggies, warm season veggies. We were going to talk, I just want to show this image really fast of plant hardiness. Well, let's show this really quick too. In terms of figuring out when to grow things, and Charmaine, maybe you can just talk about this really quick about how you use like a growing calendar to
Show you what goes in the
when to plant things. Charmaine?
I keep forgetting to unmute my mic. I'm sorry. I mean, the growing calendar is basically, so the frost, in the last 4 years since we've been growing, the last frost day, even though the calendar says the last frost day, it always varies. And I've lost a lot of crops, like I said before, because of, you know, the time. 1 second, please. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've lost a lot of crops because, you know, even though they said it was the last frost day, it got really cold. So for us, the last 3 years I've been planting in ground, for example, the things like the okra, the beans. And the way that I do that, I soak the seeds overnight so they start sprouting. And that is to ensure that they germinate completely. So once you start that soaking of the seeds and they sprout, you know, the seedlings really, the seeds turn into seedlings really fast once you put it outside because you already started the process. You know, you don't have to continue watering to make sure they're always moist. So they're always moist by the time you plant it. And the growing calendar for me is really good because you could find these calendars again on Johnny's website, Johnny Seed's website. You just have to put in your zone or the time of your last frost, and it will actually tell you when you could start planting certain things. Some of the stuff I plant inside, example, the peppers, because peppers take really long to germinate, and it's always best to start early. I've learned that the hard way. 2 years ago, I planted thinking that they would have produced fruit, and it took a long time. They actually started producing fruit in September, and the season ended because it got really cold really quickly. So Johnny Calendar is a great option to use to figure out how and when to plant.
Yeah, I love this calendar because it'll just calculate it out for you. It tells you the exact date that you could start things both indoors and outdoors based on what your average. And yeah, it's a good to point out. You're saying you've lost things past the frost date because it's the average frost date, right?
Exactly.
Half of the time the frost date could be later.
Yes.
And that I just wanted to show this. We were talking about kind of what grows here, and so people are you know, familiar with it, that they see it. There's a plant hardiness zone map that's made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and here's our little state of New Jersey here, and we're mostly green. So we are actually zone 7A in Newark. And what that means is that our minimum temperatures are generally between 0 and 5 in Fahrenheit. And that kind of determines what things can grow, not just through the warm season, but actually like what would survive, like Keven was talking about, like the fig surviving in his garden. In some places you couldn't, like if you were, you know, up in this part of Minnesota, you probably could not get your fig to survive no matter what you did. Luckily, we don't live there. So now we have, oh my gosh, we only have 10 more minutes. We've used up a ton of time and we have a ton of questions. So I'm going to start rapid fire questions for you guys. All right, you ready?
Okay.
Ready.
Like the lightning round, like at the end of the game shows, where Celeste wants to know, has anyone grown lima beans? Has anybody grown lima beans? And Celeste says she didn't have seeds. I'm pretty sure we have lima beans at the Conservancy, so you can ask us for those, Celeste. But has anybody grown lima beans?
No, I haven't.
No experience with lima beans. I can't say I've grown them either, but I love lima beans. I think I should try that. Okay, Jackie wants to know which tomatoes are the really sweet ones.
I have no idea.
Oh.
The cherry
Because
Maybe, yeah.
What's
there's
that?
cherry tomatoes that Kevin and them, the ones that comes up, they don't plant them. They're pretty sweet.
They're pretty
They're
sweet.
yellow,
Yeah.
but I don't know what variety those are.
So I'll do a little plug that on the Rutgers gardening series that they're doing, they really get it because Rutgers breeds tomatoes, right? So they will get into like all the detail of which tomatoes have different qualities. The ones, because I grow school gardens, so I got to grow things that will make kids love them. I can tell you that there's a sweet cherry tomato that's called Super Sweet 100. Kids love that. Sun Gold is another small tomato that's like, they say that the sugar content of those is like as high as in a strawberry. Like it's very sweet tomato, but those are so small tomatoes are generally the sweeter tomatoes. For big, larger size tomatoes, I'm not sure which ones are the sweetest. That's a research topic, but I can tell you the small ones, the Super Sweet 100s and the Sun Golds are super sweet. Let's see. Eliza wants to know, is there any way we can get a listing for further use of places that have seedlings available? Oh, so yeah, Eliza was wondering about where do people have seedlings? So the Conservancy, I think we've distributed all of our seedlings, our free seedlings. I don't know, do you guys know of any places either locally available seedlings besides maybe Home Depot?
Alpine in Belleville, New Jersey, they have seedlings.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's other free or those types of sources, but contact the Conservancy, check in with our seed share. We may have a few more things we're giving away here. Let's see.
They're selling at farmer markets and things like that.
And okay, those are Charmaine's replies. Jackie wanted to know, does anyone use the Farmer's Almanac for planting?
No.
off and on.
I read them in the checkout line.
You've seen them in the checkout line?
I read them in the checkout line. When the line was long, I just pick it up and go through it.
They're supposed to be very accurate, right? Or somewhat accurate.
Yeah.
But I've never used them.
Yeah. I agree. I haven't used it that much as my source. Okay, so somebody was asking, they were saying they're growing kale and broccoli and notice the leaves are getting eaten. And they found a green worm on it. How can I get rid of them? Okay, we all know what she's talking about, right?
Yep. Pluck the worm off and spray it with neem oil. That's what I do.
Neem, right? Yeah.
Yes, neem oil.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, I'm going to type that into the thing here so that Megan can put it on neem oil. Oops, I wrote it. Yeah, so those are the caterpillars of the cabbage white butterfly, those cute little like 1-inch sized butterflies you see flying around with like 2 little dots on their those will leave eggs. So some things you can do, you can look on the bottom side of your leaf and you look for these little football shaped eggs sticking out of your leaf. And when you see them there, just rub them off with your fingers, right? And then you'll have fewer caterpillars on your leaves. And neem oil, and everybody was saying they didn't use soap as a soap spray to get rid of them. Get rid of it.
No, so
I used it, but I am usually not very, I don't keep up with it enough.
Exactly.
You need to be doing it every time it rains. You need to add more. Yeah. The other thing you can do to cut down on them is if you use like a cover, like a cloth cover, like Agrabond, to keep the adult butterflies from laying eggs on the leaves, but you know that also gets tiring trying to maintain. Yeah. And in school gardens, what we say is we invite kids to pick them off and feed them to the birds. That's that's a fun activity. Okay, do we have any further questions, Megan? I think we answered all these questions. Did anybody else notice any other questions in the chat that we didn't get to? Charmaine, I noticed you were responding. Was somebody asking about Jiffy greenhouses?
Yeah, they did.
I missed that.
Could they use it next year? And I said yes, they can. And they can use it the year after and the year after. They just have to buy the pellets in order to, you know, start the seedlings. That's what I've been doing for years. Recycle, repurpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I like using those little pellets for growing stuff with kids because it's like a little self-contained little pellet that you can actually plant out in the garden. So we did talk about direct seeding versus transplanting. The thing that when you plant seedlings, you have to be really careful is to try and keep their roots together and keep them from like disintegrating when you plant them. I don't know, Kevin, do you have any special techniques for when you're planting, transplanting things to keep them from going through transplant shock?
Well, hardening them off. Did we cover that? Hardening off?
You know, we missed that.
Okay. Well, hardening off. To make it simple, if you don't want to take, and you don't have to worry about this if you're buying them from a nursery. But if you're doing this at home, and let's say you're growing them inside, a good way to harden them off inside is just to put an oscillating fan at a distance from them, look at them, making sure they're not being pushed over too much, and then leave the fan on a couple of times a day before you're getting ready to put out, like a week or two before you're getting ready to put out. Or if you can, take the tray out and set them on the front or the back porch and let the wind hit them, I say, for an hour, but keep an eye on them. And do this a little bit more and more, add another hour, so they're used to it and they're nice and strong. You can tell by looking at them that, okay, they're strong. They don't look like a thin blade of grass anymore. You know? And then put them in the ground.
Right. Yeah, so making sure that you're, you know, after you've gone through all that work of growing things from seed, you want them to be strong enough to survive the conditions that are a little tougher when things are out on the
And I like to say this: don't plant one or two or three seeds. Take a tray, and yes, some will not make it, some will. You may have a lot left over, but that's for your fellow friends and your neighbors. You know, offer them seeds, seedlings. You know, but plant plenty.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Okay, I think we answered the questions that were up here. I think we covered almost all of our stuff that we wanted to cover. I know that next week, what we plan to do is to talk about, let's see, what do we have coming up? Oh, so next week we started talking about these things a little bit this session, but we'll go into it more. A little bit about what is soil, like what makes up soil. Some more on composting and why is compost important in the garden. We're going to talk about fertilizer. I don't know if any of our gardeners use fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, but we'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about watering, like how to know how often you should water, how much you should water, different types of watering. I know that some people had questions, and I know Charmaine brought up getting water access from the city, or getting support for water access. So that would be another good topic that we'll talk about. That is all coming up in our next session. We'll see if we have enough time in that session, we may get into pests, but I have a feeling that just talking about soil and water will fill up our time. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to you. Let's see, are we up to date here? Yes, I think we're good. So we're here, we're at 8 o'clock. We learned all about growing in raised beds versus growing in, trying to grow in the ground using a lasagna system. We learned a little bit about earth boxes. I'm encouraging you to check out my YouTube videos on growing in earth boxes if you're interested more in that stuff. We talked about direct seeding versus growing from transplants and when to plant different veggies. So that was all for this session of Know It and Grow It. We are going to be here every Tuesday next month or so, for as long as we can keep going, keep your interest up. We'll probably have some Dena come back on to talk about container gardening at another session. And you can continue to put questions into the Facebook comments, and we'll bring them on to the next session. And if people are interested in either trying to get a hold of any of these gardeners or get a hold of any of the resources we mentioned, just put that in the Facebook comments and we will try and respond to you.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Can I mention one thing? Can I, real quick?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Thursday at 9 a.m. we're gonna have a cob workshop. Cobb is building like a mud house. So we have our sand, we have our subsoil, and we have our straw. And we're gonna make a mud of like an igloo or a dome house at Rabbit Hole.
Is this for real? And is this going to be happening in real life? Can people?
Yes, Thursday. As a matter of fact, our instructor is here.
One of them.
One of them.
Akoth, I see. This is so good because we actually, for our STEM camp last year, we built things. We did cob building, but I knew nothing about it. I just was going from YouTube videos. I was trying to find an instructor like you. So now I found you.
We also learned on YouTube, but I've been to another workshop before.
She's
so
cob and
I just
Guatemala
love mud.
And where else? Where? In your country, right?
Yeah,
your
that's what
country
we
in
use.
Guatemala, they built the cob house.
So,
very cool. Yeah. We will have to come and see that. Yes. So yeah, just to be sure, everybody was asking, is that at Rabbit Hole Farm? Yes, that's going to be at Rabbit Hole Farm on Thursday. At what time again?
9 a.m.
9 a.m.
a.m.
Bring your dancing legs with you, please.
Yes. Get ready.
Yeah, maybe we'll have some polka music playing or something.
It's terrific. All right. Well, thank you, gardeners. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.